Hello all. I'm going to do a quick video about Thor Love and Thunder. There will be spoilers in this, though some of you might be happy to have this film spoiled. Really not a good film. Not the worst film I've seen, and I've seen some pretty crappy films, but yeah, just an epic fail really. Quick qualifier, I didn't really enjoy Thor Ragnarok. The jokes kind of ruined any pathos for me, and this really just doubles down on that, and pretty much the whole film ends up being just one big joke. A quick précis of the storyline. So Christian Bale's child dies and he finds the Necro Sword and decides to kill the gods. So what you've basically got a setup of is a person's child dies and a mystical object corrupts them to do monstrous things. I think we've just had a film with that, haven't we? Meanwhile, Thor's off with the Guardians, having got thin again, doesn't know where he fits in the universe, doesn't really want to fight anymore, finds out that Gorr the God Butcher's wandering around killing gods, Sif's been attacked, goes back to New Asgard just as Gorr attacks. Thor starts fighting his creatures, then Mjolnir suddenly flies into view and flies back into the hands of Lady Thor, who is Jane Foster. Gorr then kidnaps the children and disappears. Asgard are panicked. Thor says he'll get an army together. Korg, Lady Thor and Valkyrie go to I don't know what it is, it's kind of a temple of gods to try and get an army together. But when they get there, the gods are all dickheads. This is the scene where Hemsworth gets completely naked. The gods just basically have no interest and refuse to help. So there's a little fight and Thor grabs Zeus's thunderbolt, throws it through him, and then they steal the thunderbolt and they go. I forgot to mention this. It turns out that one of the kids taken was Heimdall's son, who has his powers. We shall call him Magical MacGuffin Boy going forwards, because that's all he is. And this allows Thor to find out where they are and realise they're going to the Dark Realm. Or Shadow Realm, I'm not sure which it is. They discover that actually Gorr was trying to lure them there because he wanted to get Stormbreaker. Stormbreaker can create a Bifrost Bridge, and the Bifrost Bridge can reach eternity, and eternity will grant a wish for anybody who finds them first. How Gorr knew he had Heimdall's son and that Heimdall's son could communicate with Thor to tell them where they were, really no idea. Magical MacGuffin Boy. So they have a battle in the Shadow Realm. They teleport away after Valkyrie's stabbed. Gorr grabs Stormbreaker and they are now trapped back on Earth. So Gorr goes to the centre of the universe to open the portal. Thor uses Zeus's lightning bolt to transport himself there after telling Jane that she's going to die if she continues to use Mjolnir, because Mjolnir is basically killing her. It's making the chemotherapy not work. So he goes off, then magically empowers all the children with the power of Thor. There's a nice little battle goes on, and then he concentrates on Gorr. He's not having a good time of it. Lady Thor turns up, and together they manage to destroy the Necro Sword. Unfortunately, the portal's been opened, Gorr steps through, and suddenly Thor and Jane, because she's transformed back to Jane, and Gorr are there in front of eternity. And Thor basically persuades Gorr that surely what he really wants is to have his daughter back, because love's all that matters. After they tell Gorr that if he wishes his daughter back alive, they will take care of her. Jane dies, so he wishes his daughter back alive, and she actually appears in a reflection as if she's kind of a part of eternity. So there's obviously something going on there. Yeah, and that's kind of it really. The next bit you get is Thor with Gorr's daughter, and he's looking after her, and they're about to jump into a battle. He gives her Stormbreaker, he has Mjolnir. After credits scene is Zeus basically saying, how dare humans forget us, and he sends Hercules to fight Thor. The final credits scene is Jane Foster arrives in Valhalla and Heimdall's there to welcome her. It's just thinking where to start on this film. I haven't written anything down, so this is a stream of consciousness, so I apologise for the somewhat irrational nature of this video. Let's start with Thor. Thor's an idiot. Thor is shown as a complete and utter buffoon. Everything he does goes wrong. He's got this weird three-way thing with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, where Stormbreaker's jealous because suddenly Stormbreaker's a living thing. It's just, and that's throughout the film. It's just cringeworthy. I mean, it ends up with Thor pouring a beer over Stormbreaker so they can share a beer. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So that's one big problem. I mean, Thor was made to look an idiot in Ragnarok, but at least he had a couple of redeeming moments, and I suppose there's one in this a little bit, but yeah, most of it is just made to look an idiot. Jane Foster is in this, Natalie Portman. Her comic timing's awful. Whilst it's definitely a Thor film, not a female Thor film, at the end of it, she ends up fighting Gore whilst Thor's messing around with Stormbreaker. The conceit about her getting Mjolnir and becoming female Thor is that Thor told Mjolnir to look after Jane at the point they're in the relationship, and kind of the magic rune appeared on it, similar to when Odin enchanted it. So the idea is Mjolnir calls to Jane because she's dying from cancer. She goes to New Asgard, which is now a tourist destination. Mjolnir suddenly sparks to life and joins together, and she becomes female Thor. But then later in the film you find out that Mjolnir's killing her because it's stopping the cancer treatment working, which is similar to what happens in the comics. But then Mjolnir's not protecting her by turning her into Thor and being with her, so why would Mjolnir do what it's doing? Why would the conceit work? Mjolnir is supposed to be protecting her, it's not protecting her, it's killing her. The whole thing is ridiculous, because they couldn't be bothered to figure out a decent way why she would be worthy of lifting the hammer. Tessa Thompson's in it. I think that's the best can be said. She doesn't really do a great deal. She's her usual self. She just kind of plays Tessa Thompson. She's fine, just not really necessary in the film. Korg's in it far too much. That's Taika Waititi injecting himself into the film as much as possible. It becomes quite wearisome after a while. Taika Waititi is a one-trick pony, and whilst it can work, Jojo Rabbit is an excellent film if you haven't seen it, and it's definitely worth a watch. His humour is the same in every film, and it's quite childish humour. But in this, you've got the extra problem of really awful lines and awful jokes. There's a scene between Thor and Sif. It's like they're acting badly on purpose. It's a shockingly bad and badly written scene. And again, that scene messes something up that happens later in the film. Because in that scene, Sif says, "Oh, I'm dying, I'm going to Valhalla." And Thor says, "Oh no, you've got to die in battle to go to Valhalla." But then Jane at the end of it goes to Valhalla when she dies. But she didn't die in battle, she died of cancer after the battle. So that makes no sense. So Gore figures out somehow that the Bifrost is the way to get to eternity. Eternity is the magic MacGuffin, by the way. Another mystical object that if you find it will solve your problems. Where have we heard that before as well? How he finds that out, we don't know. All we know is he's going around killing gods. I mean, don't really understand the logic of him going around killing gods. There's not really much motivation, but there you go. But what happens to him is his child dies. He manages to find an oasis where he finds his god. And he prays to his god, who's standing there, and his god just mocks and jokes at him, and then tells him that he's just killed someone who was trying to kill him with a necrosword. It's like, oh, that's a convenient plot device there. So the necrosword just happens to be there, and you're just telling this new person that person's just tried to kill you. And it's like, really? I was incredulous at the ridiculousness of that particular moment. It's like literally exposition of someone. Oh, there's the sword, by the way. You can kill me with that. Just dumb. Anyway, he knows how that the Bifrost opens the gate to eternity. How? Never explained. And that's why he took the children, because he wanted to get Thor. Now, did he know Thor could open a Bifrost with Stormbreaker? In which case, why didn't he go straight after Thor? Or go straight to New Asgard knowing Thor would arrive? Why waste time with the rest of it? Just go and wish for all the gods to die. Go get Stormbreaker, wish for all the gods to die. All the other rest of it's just wasted time. Alternatively, once Thor, etc. found out that that's how to get to eternity, why not just go there themselves and make the wish either for Jane not to have cancer or for Gore to lose? I don't know, because, eternity will only grant one wish to the first person who goes and wishes. And there again, you've set this magic MacGuffin up that works on the principle that in the whole of eternity, given the character's name is Eternity, nobody has ever bothered trying to get there, and nobody has ever tried to use a rainbow bridge, which we know is just a wormhole, as explained previously. The Asgardians have the power to go, so why wouldn't they have gone? In the past, now, in eternity. It makes no sense. Gore kidnaps the children to get Thor to go to this dark realm. Thor goes to the dark realm, loses Stormbreaker, but then Gore takes the children with him to the centre of the universe to go to eternity. Why? Well, why just not leave them behind? It does lead to quite a cool scene where Thor basically gives all the kids the power of Thor on a short-term basis, and there's quite a cool fight scene. But then why didn't you do that with their parents? If you're able to imbue people with the power of Thor, why haven't you done it to their parents before you left when you needed an army? I can understand why it didn't happen in previous films, because I'm presuming he only really opened the Odin Thors and knew his true self in Ragnarok. But then why didn't he use it in Endgame? Why didn't he use it in Infinity War? We could have imbued all the Avengers with the powers of Thor. So yeah, it's just a bizarre moment. Led to a cool scene, but a bizarre moment. And it's full of that stuff, really. Bad dialogue. Barely funny jokes that drag on so long. I must admit, I chuckled a couple of times. There were a couple of jokes I laughed at. I forgot to mention, they go to this kind of palace of the gods to try and find an army to help them. One of whom is the god of carpenters. And that was right. So you're basically saying Jesus is here? Do you know how disrespectful that is? You know, there's plenty of reason for pagans to be annoyed at the way the gods have been treated anyway. Because, you know, there are people who still worship pagan gods. But then to do it to Christianity as well, I mean, you could argue it's fair game if you're going to do it to pagan gods, but it kind of indicates that there are certain religions that they think are rife for mockery and certain others that they won't go near. And then this scene, all the gods are idiots, and especially Zeus. Zeus is just shown as this fat moron. I mean, the characterization of him is shockingly bad. And, you know, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to other gods. He doesn't care what happens to mortals. He doesn't care. It's nothing to do with him. Then at the end of the film, in the end credits, he's moaning that humans don't worship the gods anymore, don't care about them anymore. It's like, but an hour ago you didn't give a shit about them. Why suddenly do you care that they're doing that now? Just a kind of 180 character. And I'm sure you've probably all heard before, the CGI in places is awful stuff. I know they did it on one of those stages similar to the one they use on The Mandalorian, but if you've watched The Mandalorian, you'll know some of that is remarkable, and much of it, when I was watching it, I didn't realise it was a screen. I thought they were actually gone on location. But here, I don't know whether it's the matting, whether it's the lighting that they never bothered to change, but they look like they're in front of a screen. It's quite shocking in places. It's really bad. And I recently watched kind of some early MCU films, including Dark World, which I know lots of people hate. And there is a scene where they go to the Elves' planet, which is a bit ropey, but the special effects in it are pretty outstanding, pretty incredible. Iron Man, amazing special effects. And yet, 14, 15 years down the road, and we're getting worse special effects than we were back then? Maybe they've stretched themselves too thin, I don't know, but it was shockingly bad. And as I say, if you're making a film that feels very much like a parody, with bad special effects, it gives you the impression as an audience that they don't care anymore. And if they don't care, why should we as an audience care? And if we as an audience don't care, that's the end of your franchise. That's the end of the MCU. So in summary, it's a bit of a mess of a film. Contradictory, doesn't make sense a lot of the time, MacGuffins all through it, awful jokes that just repeat and repeat, just making the whole thing, literally I'll use the word again, a parody of itself. Hemsworth, he's good as Thor. I've always liked him as Thor, and he plays the role well. I don't think he's a great comedian, but that's just a personal choice. And I'm sure some people will love this film, but having read Thor for about 40 years, I know this is not Thor. The Guardians are barely in it. Gore's not in it that much. Christian Bale. People rave about Christian Bale. For me, Christian Bale's Christian Bale. He pretty much plays the same person every time. And, you know, they missed a trick with him because he kidnaps the children, but he terrorises the children. All they needed to do was have him soften a little when maybe he's with the children. Show that they have had an impact on him. He's lost his child. He's surrounded by children. That would impact him. And that would lead to the decision at the end where he decides to bring his daughter back to life. I kind of sat staring at it and it washed over me. I wasn't moved by the emotional bit. I should have been. I don't know why I wasn't. I just wasn't. Because that was actually played relatively well. The scene between Thor and Jane was quite a nice scene. And the scene with Gore at the end was quite a nice scene. But by that point, I stopped caring. Because everything had been a joke up to that point. don't think it's a film I'll be watching again. I'm sure other people have very differing opinions. As a Thor fan, it's not Thor. It's even less like Thor than Ragnarok was. I recently watched actually Ragnarok again, but I cut out all the stupid stuff. And there's a kernel of a decent film in there, and there may well be a kernel of a decent film in here as well. But it's lost amongst the nonsense and the stupid writing and the bad jokes. Anyway, I'm going to be repeating myself, so I better stop. Just a reminder that my comic book, Marked, a 228-page graphic novel, is available from my website, as are bespoke caricatures and prints. And the link is in the description below. Thank you very much, and peace out.